Okay, so the next step is to analyze individual overhead costs in terms of the cost activities we just identified. For Lilly Ice Cream Company, recall that the total overhead cost is $1.74 million created by 4 different activities. The components of the overhead cost and the 4 activities are shown here. Implementation of the ABC system now requires that each of the overhead costs be analyzed to determine what fraction of those costs is caused or driven by each one of the 4 overhead cost activities. Consider the first item on the list, electricity costs of $200,000. The use of electricity is a good example of a unit-level overhead activity because the more units that are produced, the higher the electricity cost. In terms of Lilly's analysis, the electricity cost is part of the cost of operating the ice cream production process. Accordingly, the $200,000 in electricity cost is included as part of the cost of this activity. Notice how the costs in the rows representing these overhead costs have been assigned to the associated overhead cost activity column. Our goal is to assign all $1.74 million in overhead costs to one of the 4 overhead cost activity columns. Now, some overhead costs are split among activities. For example, some of the factory cleaner costs are associated with the number of gallons of ice cream produced, and some are associated with the number of batches produced. The hard part of implementing an ABC system is analyzing these kind of overhead costs in terms of what fraction is associated with each overhead cost activity. This analysis requires a detailed understanding of the production process and the underlying causes of all the individual overhead costs. Now, many companies do not have this detailed understanding, and gaining such an understanding would involve a long and costly examination of the production process. Not surprisingly, this is where some companies decide to avoid the cost of implementing an ABC system and instead just stay with their traditional overhead allocation approach. For some companies, this makes sense because the cost of implementing the ABC system is higher than the benefit to be gained in improved cost information. But in other cases, as we will see with Lilly Ice Cream Company, an ABC system can more than pay for itself in terms of better decisions as well as a better understanding of factors creating costs inside the company. Each of the overhead cost activity columns is called a cost pool. The cost pool associated with operating the ice cream production process totals $750,000. The ice cream batch cost pool totals $440,000. The ice cream flavor cost pool totals $270,000. And the facility support or keeping the factory open cost pool totals $280,000. Now, we are ready to assign overhead to production using activity-based costing and these cost pools.